What's good? It's Fevir. Today I want to talk a bit about Fortnite. This is a game I've been playing quite heavily the last couple of weeks, and I've probably put about 60 to 70 hours into it, so I thought I'd speak on it. And to just cut to the bottom line, this is a great game that I just can't recommend. And that might sound really strange to hear, but I'll try to break down why that's the case. Now, Fortnite as a game is a co-op up to 4-player, hero-based, lobby-based, survival/tower defense/RPG/ a whole bunch of other things. The game boils down to joining a type of mission from a selection of different mission types that amount to defending a point or rescuing survivors or building structures, all while defending against hordes and hordes of zombies, or what they call them in Fortnite, husks. And because it is part of that zombie type genre, scavenging the surrounding areas for materials is also core to the game. And besides using an assortment of weapons from rifles to grenade launchers to golf clubs to machetes, you can choose from a number of different heroes that all have specific active and passive type abilities to allow you to kill the husks in fashion or just excel in different types of things. And you also will have free reign to both destroy most of what's on the map, but also build all over the map using an incredibly intuitive, simple, yet powerful building function, and then dress your structures up with different types of traps to better manage the husk menace. This is where the tower defense thing kind of comes into play. Now, all of this is done in these pretty large open world type maps that are procedurally generated with a decent amount of variation for you to explore in. They will contain your main objective, but will also have these randomly spawned additional missions, so you might be sent to defend a point, but while running around the map you might find a person being chased by zombies or chased onto a car. You can help them out and you'll be rewarded, or you might be walking around and find a rift that houses a very strong, almost mini-boss type zombie that you're rewarded for killing. And looking at the game, you should be able to notice that it's incredibly stylized, but the writing and especially the humor portions of the game where they have quest and narrative is great. The gunplay looks a lot worse than it feels. The act of just playing Fortnite is great. It feels great on controller, it feels great on console, it feels great with mouse and keyboard. It's a fun game, and better yet, it's a fun co-op game. All of this stuff is what is great about Fortnite. The gameplay listed above is very addicting, the building on its own is incredible, and you're even given multiple home bases that you can create these like persistent structures of your own or visit your friends, and you can easily sink hours and hours and hours trying to perfect each one. And something I liked a lot more than I should are the lengths of each mission, generally ranging from about 15 to 30 minutes each, and they're gated by a clock, so that kind of helps that speedrun mentality fall off a bit. Now, at this point, 60 to 70 hours in, the game is still fun to play, but where Fortnite falls for me isn't in playing the game, it's almost everything else, and we'll touch on a bunch of different issues, but I'll start with progression. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail into the specific progression structures. I'm going to be talking a lot more broad strokes, and that's because explaining each piece of Fortnite's progression will sound convoluted, because it is. Instead of picking and choosing specific progression or customization structures that make sense for the game, it almost feels like Fortnite collects them, and this leads to an unintuitive interface and menu clusterfuck, and it just gives the illusion of complexity when it really just ends up being a lot of knobs to tune and turn. But the crux of the problem is that basically everything in this game, outside of the act of building, exists as a card. So your hero, your weapons, your survivors, which are a Fortnite-themed system that is most comparable to armor, your traps, your defenders, your everything, exists as a card with a rarity, with a level, and a tier. Rarity is color-coded and should seem familiar to you if you've played other online RPGs: gray, green, blue, purple, uncommon, common, epic, rare, etc. Level, instead of earning experience through use, experience exists as an item that you earn as a reward from missions or by destroying a card. Higher levels means more power, and a tier denoted by a star that, if you're familiar with other mobile games, this would be the awakening or the evolution phase, but without going into it, this represents level thresholds and additional strength. Now, why this is important to go over is that when it comes to progression in this game or getting stronger, remember, everything in this game can be progressed. There are two forms. There is progression that you can chase, so strengthening the cards that you have with experience to level them up, or playing missions to level your account up, which lets you then put skill points into a massive skill tree, but there's a limit, or rather a wall, or better yet, a cap. You can max out those levels, but progression is hinged on the specific cards and especially the rarities of those cards, as the amount of times that something can be leveled up, or the amount of abilities on a hero, or the bonuses attached to a weapon, are tied to the rarity level of the card. The more rare the card is, not only is it more powerful, but the higher higher it can be leveled. And this doesn't sound too bad until we talk about a second form of progression, a form that you can't chase. There exists a secondary skill tree, the research tree, where you earn points passively over real-world time, and as long as you log in for the day and collect your research points, you will just slowly grow stronger over time. But the true cap of your strength is obtaining cards. But not only the right cards, but the right cards in the right rarities, and the only reliable way to do this is through the use of V-Bucks, the game's premium currency, mainly acquired through spending real money, and you use the V-Bucks to buy loot boxes, or what they're called here, llamas. There's a small amount of V-Bucks awarded sporadically through playing the game, to the extent of about 1 llama every 2 to 3 days, and the tutorial phase of the game gives you an unrealistic expectation because they're just kind of throwing them at you initially, but that falls off really hard. And progression turns into just hoping that the right things drop from these llamas, a higher quality version of what you already have, and not to conflate it even further, but even if you get these drops, they have an action RPG-like randomness to it with properties or effects that are randomized as well, so even a higher rarity might not be more powerful, which, not to pile onto the game, many of which of these have graphical bugs or don't display properly, or the bonuses aren't currently functioning. There is no way to target specific things, you can get duplicates, and the pool of things that you can get in these llamas that you're only getting a couple at a time are so massive, the pool's so big, that the chances of getting anything worth anything are so low. And a good example, or a decent example, is in an act of goodwill with their consumers, because the monetization of this game has been a concern for the years of testing the game has been under NDA. They just recently gave everybody 15 llamas. This is the equivalent of about a month or more of what you would earn as a free player. I earned 1 side grade. RNG can be a bitch, but besides the legendary cards that I got for buying my Founders Pack, and probably having opened up to like $100 worth of llamas, I haven't gotten any legendary guns, melee weapons, heroes, defenders, or traps, and that's the second highest rarity. And to put that into further perspective, $100 into llamas is kind of the equivalent of about 6 to 7 months of just playing the game every single day without spending money. And I'm not even at a point where I'm picky about what I get. I'm just looking for orange or higher based gear. So when you get better gear, there's even less in the pool that is useful or even interesting to you. And I know that's anecdotal, and there'll be somebody coming here that says like, oh, well, I got 4 legendaries and 4 llamas, so deal with it. But that's not the point. And this unchaseable progression is what the community has been calling the wall, which essentially is just saying that your progression is capped by something you don't have control over, something that you can't work towards. Because that one form of progression, the first one, the thing that you can actually do, all you can do is realize your character or your account's strength up to a certain point. But that point is completely dictated by how much you spend or the luck of the die. Because you have to kind of think about it, let's move it into action RPG type terms, right? Yes, you might get bad rolls, you do bosses, you do rifts, you do maps, and you're not getting the right thing to drop. But you can keep running that boss over and over and over again. In Fortnite, what they're saying is, you can't. We're going to let you run one boss every 2 or 3 days, and if you want to run more than that, you have to spend money. It's a pretty literal definition of pay to maybe, and probably not, progress. That all said, I personally don't have too much of a problem playing a game with that type of system. I've been pretty transparent in the past that I enjoy gacha style games, which this takes a lot of inspiration from. I think there is room for games like this in the market, and not everybody will feel that way. What I find matters more is the way the game surrounding the system is delivered. It can be shitty if the game is balanced around needing RNG drops or having a competitive mode, 2 things that Fortnite doesn't have or do, but it does require a mentality shift. It's a game that you can't binge, or rather doesn't reward you for binging, so playing 12 hours over the weekend might not progress you as much as if you just played an hour a day over the week, and RNG can trump all of that effort. This style has pros and cons. I look at the gacha style games that I do currently play, games like Summoner's War, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. These are games that have managed to maintain almost daily attention from me for over a year each, something very few games do. I know how shitty the system can be and how exploitive it feels, as well as not being common in games like this, which is why I can't recommend it. Because a game like this, you need to go into it with your eyes open. A lot of people just won't accept a game that doesn't let you just sit down and play it for the amount of time that you have to play it, and having a game that kind of has game systems that say like, hey, just play an hour a day every day, that's all we want from you, is something that people are going to say, this is bullshit. And without boring you or appearing to further rationalize it, it's also a shitty implementation of the gacha system, and is exploitive not only to the people who won't play in the future, but actually goes after the whales and the people who are playing in a way that will make them turn away. But what's more, and this is a real problem, these types of games quite often will have a very long, very similar to this game, unrealistic grind attached to them, and generally only will work well in tandem with things like daily, weekly, monthly, and like holiday type events to dress up the grind, to give more limited time rewards or freebies or goals to active players, to add novelty and give you short-term goals to focus on while you make progress on longer tail goals unknowingly. And the developers have said, like, look, we're looking to make Fortnite a platform that we'll add on to in the future, and events are things that interest them. But I'm getting the feeling that they're going to try to substitute that, the curated, developed for content, with procedurally generated worlds and this alert style limited time rewards for running the same missions, which won't work. And people throughout all of the tests burn out hard, and you're already seeing it happen now. And knowing how small the team is, knowing how slow development went during the closed alpha under NDA, Mega Bacon and Base Recycler for a little bit of street cred there, it can be hard to keep up a content schedule in a mobile game that's just doing small dinky 2D sprites without any real animation or anything, let alone in a game like Fortnite, which is going to want 3D modeling and animations or new biomes or prefabs put into the game. So I'm slightly worried that they just won't be able to have an aggressive enough event system or an aggressive enough reason to log into the game, which at this point is a comment that will be met with something I haven't even mentioned. People are bound to say, dude, it still has time to flesh itself out. It's in early access. Now guys, you know my feeling about early access. It's a dumb phrase that means next to nothing at the best of times, and the moment you can pay in for access, and especially if there is further monetization onto those people who have already paid outside of just testing the payment structure, it is basically released. And the phrase only exists at that point as armor. Usually these are the peak profits for the game. It's also the peak player bases, the peak interest, the highest amount of hype, the most buzz these games are going to get, and they'll roll into a release without a big fuss. But Fortnite, goddamn, and I might get a little bit heated here, they have taken the phrase and they've bent it over. So let's start small and build. The latest early access of Fortnite had a head start period for its early access. They have confirmed that there are going to be no more wipes. They've also been blasting out marketing, which of course includes sponsored streams and influencer content. And while if you look online, you can clearly see that it is labeled as early access, that is more the exception than the rule. And when I go to the PlayStation Store, nowhere before I buy it does it mention that it is in early access or even beta. Interestingly enough, Dreadnought and Destiny 2 are recent examples of having game art and descriptions show that it isn't a real or full release of a game, so it's not that they couldn't do it. And I haven't seen it with my own eyes because I don't use an Xbox, but apparently Xbox has a section for both early access and in development games and released games, and guess which section Fortnite shows up in? Released. Offline, it's even worse, and I took these pictures from a GameStop today. I also checked Best Buy, Walmart, Shoppers Drug Mart, which is like a pharmacy, and a couple other places. All of them had physical copies of the game with no indication that the game itself was in early access. I asked all of the clerks in each of the shops. I also saw it in different flyers. No one knew, I didn't find any warning or indication anywhere that it was an unfinished early access game in real life. Now, mentioning this online, you get a ton of people almost victim shaming, saying, you should do your research before you buy a game, and if you don't, then that's on you. Let me just say, from my experience having had and owned my own game shop, something dumb like 50% of people back then, the people who were buying physical games were usually adults buying them for their children or nephews or as presents, and that would go even higher in non-gaming centric places like Walmart, and they're even in end caps and the areas in a store that's like, this is the new hotness, buy this, your kids are gonna love it. It's also neat that this is selling for not only above what they sell base access for the game on PC, which, interestingly enough, is then playable on at least the PS4, but the game is sold at full new release price. And let me tell you, the game is great. I enjoyed the game. I've played it for tons of hours. I think I've gotten my money's worth for entertainment, but that's not the problem. The problem is that it's being sold under the assumption, under the guise that it is a complete game, and it's not. And I mean, the company is not only taking the steps to get these games listed on the online stores, and believe me, PlayStation is notorious for not allowing most early access titles, and going through the steps to ship physical copies. Like, why not just wait until your actual release, which I haven't mentioned yet, is supposed to be next year, and the game will be free to play, or just put a sticker on it for now. If you really need to have it in the stores right now, just put a sticker on it, or add a blurb in the PlayStation Store about it being early access. or create a custom early access thumbnail for the game online. Like, I don't believe it's malicious, but it sure as hell is grimy. And my wild speculation after seeing the grind that awaits you as you play more and more of this game, I think that they're hoping that by the time most people get to the point in the game where the content breaks down, where the game is clearly unfinished, not just the appearance of bugs, which there are many, but just not done, they will have had time to patch that in and try to get ahead of it. The thing that made me the most upset, and I saved it for last because people will be like, oh, boo-hoo, poor little whale, a fool and his money are easily parted. But if you check out all the online stores and places to buy the Founders Pack, to buy access to this game, you will find 4 packages, and they will range from about $50 to $200 Canadian. Now, as with games with huge prices on their Founders Packs, a $200 one obviously was met with criticism, and I've already seen people say, why the hell are you charging $200 for a Founders Pack? But wait, there's more. There is a hidden Founders Pack that you can only see if you buy the largest Founders Pack, and the upgrade for me was like another $140. This is whale hunting done poorly that I don't want to go into specifically right now, but specific offers targeted only at the paying people, hidden from the masses who would roll their eyes to see that a game has close to a $350 Founders Pack. Now, if you followed me, you know I have zero problem spending money in games and 4 games in support of them. So as I was playing Fortnite, as I was like, man, this game is fun, I want to support them, I bought the largest Founders Pack in support of the game. And if that hidden $340 pack was there, I probably would have bought that instead, just to show support. The money wasn't the issue. But I was actually streaming it when I bought it, and I would love if somebody from that stream corroborated this in the comments, but I went from like this mini rant about like supporting people and projects that you find value in, and the moment I bought it and this new package instantly popped up, I went, fuck this, I think I want a refund. And again, you might hear something like this and just say, oh, boo-hoo. But think about it a bit like this. Let's pretend there's a person and he forgot his lunch and he asks his friends for a couple bucks so that he can eat. And across the different friends he asks, they have all different levels of disposable income. His first buddy's like, yeah, here's $5-10, go get yourself a Whopper. I got you, bud. The next guy, he has a little bit more money. He's like, here's $25, stay away from fast food. Go somewhere where you can sit down. And the last guy goes, shit, man, you're having a bad day. Let's make it a great day. Here's $100. Go somewhere fancy, treat yourself, right? All this is done in support, to help out, to support this friend that they feel a type of way for. But the tone completely changes if the friend turns around to the person who just gave him $100 for lunch and goes something like, hey man, I probably won't bring lunch tomorrow, can you give me another $100? That guy just becomes an asshole at that point. And he's not an asshole just to the person who spent a lot of money, it's just when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I'm going to repeat myself, but it's not about the dollar amount, it's this feeling of being taken advantage of in such a direct way, but the company's taking advantage of the people who, okay, some of them are just buying whatever they can because of in-game advantages, although if you were doing that, you'd probably be buying V-Bucks, but you're taking advantage of your biggest supporters. And like, dude, like even just the way that they're doing it, like I don't get it. Why even do something like this? It's all just to what, not show the super deluxe ultimate pack in the store? Just like so much of how this game has been shown to the public since its final early access debut is just grimy. It's strange because it's not malicious, it's just grimy. And in the 6 long years that this game has been in development, it's always given off this for gamers by gamers vibe. They've said all the right things in the past. Monetization will only be cosmetics and maybe boosts. They find the idea of time gates or paying for power super lame. But I think somewhere in what appears to be, if you look at it like developer hell, the game was probably going to be scrapped, or it was just a fight to be able to get it pushed out and playable, that they might have had to compromise. And there might have been an outside influence that you may be able to attribute certain things to. And the game and their view and how they had to do things changed. And honestly, the game itself is great. Everything else almost deserves to be reworked entirely. Obviously, though, that's not realistic. And as somebody who has spent time and money in various mobage and early access and paid betas and freemium games, the way I see the whole thing is that they've settled on a way of monetizing. They've built a game around it that at this point they can't change. They've pulled inspiration and features from games that have done it successfully, but they're having a bit of an identity crisis where they don't want to be or be perceived as what they are. You can't play both sides, and all they're going to do is turn away the audiences from both sides. And honestly, I could keep going. I'm checking the time on this video. It's already too long. Fortnite, it's a great game that I don't recommend. Until next time, this is Fevir. Peace.